HubSpot makes impossible growth impossibly easy for their customers. And here's the perfect example. Morehouse College needed to reach new students with fresh, engaging content. But with a massive 900-page website, even the tiniest updates took 30 minutes to publish. Breeze, HubSpot's collection of AI tools, helped them write and optimize their content in a fraction of the time. The results? 30% more page views, and visitors now spend 27% more time on their site. If you're ready for impossible growth like this, you can visit HubSpot.com. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a new week. It's Monday, July 21st. I'm Jon Weigell here with Phill Agnew from Nudge Podcast, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic socialist, stunned the New York City political establishment by defeating Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic mayoral primary through an aggressive social media campaign. His success challenges traditional political marketing and approaches and offers some insights into modern voter psychology. So, in order to discuss that psychology, we chatted with one of the best marketing minds I know, Phill Agnew from Nudge Podcast. And we'll get to all that in a bit, but first, let's give you the news in business and tech. Starting us off here, AI vibe coding startup Lovable raised a $200 million round at $1.8 billion valuation, and they did it all in only 8 months. Other than being extremely new to the scene, Lovable helps non-devs join the fun of building websites and apps, and it claims 2.3 million active users. Next, another company, Infocal, a Dutch laser beam tech startup, raised $5.8 million to expand its specialized food and beverage lasering program. Okay, so what is that? Infocal's lasers accelerate the process of putting barcodes, QR codes, and expiration dates on cans and bottles. But what here could impact most of us down the road? It'll also, at super fast speed, print directly onto avocados, apples, bananas, and all these kinds of fruits, negating the need for sticker labels in the future, which is a future that I'm excited to live in. Over to some celebrity news. Snoop Dogg added another business to his growing empire. He's now a co-owner of Welsh soccer club Swansea City. Seems like a win-win here. The team gains further capital and eyeballs of Snoop's over 100 million social media followers, and Snoop adds yet another piece to his $160 million net worth. And finally, as you can imagine from all your friends talking about it, Superman crushed the box office over the weekend yet again. The James Gunn-helmed reboot grossed $122 million in its opening weekend, and according to ComScore, it has now grossed $235 million domestically and $406.8 million worldwide. I'm sure those numbers will fly even higher pretty soon. If you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. Big Technology Podcast from reporter Alex Kantrowitz has the answers. The show hosts top leaders from places like NVIDIA, OpenAI, Amazon, and more, asking them where this is all really going. It also does fun news recaps every Friday with top-tier analysts. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, you can listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That's Big Technology Podcast. Okay, and for more updates on business and tech news, you can come back tomorrow. We'll have more for you every day of the week, Monday through Friday. But now we're going to have a conversation with Phill Agnew about Zohran Mamdani, the winner of the New York City mayoral primary. How did he do it? Lots of social media, a lot of psychology. We're going to dissect it right now. Hey, Phill. Great to have you on the show. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah, it's nice to catch up again.
I felt like you'd be a really good authority on this because of your research in psychology and marketing. So we, of course, in New York City have kind of experienced the latest New York City mayoral primary, and we have a winner of Zohran Mamdani, a relatively new face in the New York sphere, beating Andrew Cuomo, who, for context, has been in the political sphere here in New York for a long, long time. So it was a pretty surprising defeat. So I wanted to kind of analyze with you the Zohran campaign. And first thing I wanted to ask you that what maybe he did differently that you perhaps haven't seen in a political campaign before in terms of persuasion.
Well, John, and to the listeners, fair warning that you probably couldn't have had someone on the show who knows less about politics in general, especially New York politics. I mean, you just listen to my accent, guys. What am I going to know? What I do know, however, is the psychology, the behavioral science about persuasion, about how people are able to persuade others to their point of view. And John, maybe for the listeners, you can share a bit about it as well. But like the way he conducted his campaign, he used a lot of interesting social media tactics, created a lot of videos that people feel like they could relate to. He seemed like you weren't really voting for a politician. You were voting almost for a friend, someone who gets you. That was sort of how he went about it, right?
He was doing a lot of social media campaigns. I think he's just been very, very active in the New York community. And I like something you said there, that he kind of approached more as a friend than as a politician. And I feel like that kind of swayed a lot of people. I'd love to hear more from your perspective about kind of changing tone of voice in order to persuade and what that psychologically means.
Well, if you try and persuade someone by telling them what to do, it will almost always backfire. People feel their autonomy is limited, they're far less likely to act. This is known in psychology as reactance, and the famous study behind this was from a Californian nursery. It's this weird nursery, you would call it kindergarten, wouldn't it? Weird kindergarten in California. It's a really like wealthy place, and all these rich kids go there, and they've let some psychologists in over the years to run these hilarious experiments. You know, it's like no kids were harmed in the making of these experiments. I'll just clarify that for the listeners. But they've run all these experiments. They've discovered all these amazing things about human psychology. And one of the things that they discovered, one of the experiments they ran, was they had two different classes of children. One where the kids can sort of pick any toy they want to play with, which toy is the most popular, and they find that a certain toy is the most popular. I can't remember what it was. Let's pretend it's a little mini piano. That becomes the most popular. The teddy bear is basically always forgotten. These rich kids have got loads of teddy bears back home. They don't need one of them. So in a study, you always need a variant to compare the two. And then the variant, the teddy bear, which was sort of entirely forgotten by the kids in the first version of the scenario, the variant, the teddy bear is put behind perplex glass in the middle of the room. They can't access it, but they can see it. And it's driving these kids mad. It's just like, yes, I can play with every other toy, but I really want to play with that teddy because you're not letting me play with it. My autonomy is limited, and I really have an urge. And so we have this as a child. And the finding basically is that in the scenario where the kids can't play with the teddy bear, they always want to play with it. In the scenario where they can play with every toy, they basically forget about the teddy bear. And this is the idea of reactance. We don't like our autonomy being limited. So if a politician, if a teacher, if a police officer is literally telling me, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, it's going to cause us that reactance. And I'll do great examples of somebody who's applied this. When politicians don't sort of tell you exactly what you need to do, you need to eat less red meat, we need to stop doing this, we need to start doing more of this, and actually just appeal to us and seem like people that we understand and get and we trust, they can be far more persuasive.
It's a very interesting concept. I mean, it kind of harkens back to what I think is like reverse psychology of somebody telling you something that you can't do and you immediately want to do the exact opposite. And especially in politics, where I feel like you probably in the UK, you see a lot of this, like political ads, like local ones especially, always like, oh, vote this person, vote that person. Very direct messaging. What you're getting at with it's less reactance. And when you're talking about that middle ground between like vote for me and a mixed messaging that doesn't actually tell you to do anything or any call to action, what do you think is a good balance out of those things?
I think the balance is a question. So people are far more likely to be persuaded when they feel they have come to their own conclusion. Like what we were saying earlier, my autonomy is not being limited. So another set of studies done in the 80s, this is a very interesting study because they presented arguments to students in the study. They were seniors. Some of the arguments were just presented. So, for example, climate change is causing devastating effects in Arizona deserts. Here's a list of facts. Another way they presented the argument is they started with a question. They said, do you agree that climate change is devastating Arizona deserts, yada, yada, yada. What they found was when they started it with the do you agree, they were far more persuasive than when they simply gave the command. Politicians use this all the time. The famous Kennedy ad, which some of the listeners might remember, is, well, would you buy a used car from this man? I can't remember which one it was. And there was a picture of Nixon. And this advert is so incredibly powerful because it doesn't tell people don't vote for Nixon, which we know would backfire. It gets people to think about the question in their own mind. Would I buy a used car from this person? And if you're doing that mental arithmetic in your head, and you feel like you come to your own conclusion. It feels like your autonomy isn't being limited. You come to a conclusion that maybe you wouldn't buy the used car from that person, or maybe you would. But by coming to your own conclusion, you are far more likely to be persuaded by that message than if you were simply told, don't vote for this person or do vote for this person. As I said at the start, I don't know much about US politics. A lot of the anti-Trump rhetoric was, don't vote for this man. Don't do it. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. Same with Brexit was the one in the UK. Do not vote for Brexit. It'll ruin our economy. And in many ways it has. They weren't wrong. But the point is, like, we were told not to do something. Do not do something. And for many, many people, I think for actually the majority of people, we don't like that messaging. And I think the Brexiteers sort of hit on something well, which was that they didn't tell people not to do something. They gave people the hint of freedom. Trump probably does the same thing. I think other politicians do the same thing. And yeah, I think asking a question is a very persuasive way of framing it.
Yeah. Very true. I really like the framing you used there, because especially in the American political system, for like the Democratic side, a lot of the messaging of the past campaign was, do not vote for this man, do not do this. And what do we see? The exact opposite happen. I want to know, in your perspective, what role does kind of likability play, not only in politics, but just in marketing in general? For example, if you're a brand and you have a spokesperson and that spokesperson is well liked, what can that do for your brand that maybe other tactics cannot? Just that general likability concept.
Well, this is like the catch-22 for politicians, right? They typically are the least likable people on the planet. I mean, they literally created their whole career as like, I want to be in charge. It's like, come on, get a life. So they're typically not very likable. And yet they have to persuade people that they're likable. And this is where you see all this cringe. I mean, in the UK, we've got like politicians doing TikTok videos who definitely shouldn't be on TikTok. It's like, oh my God, this is melting my brain.
Oh my God.
But there is a way to become more likable, and it actually is a slightly different bias from what we've talked about so far. It's a very interesting one. It's one all of us can remember and should use in our lives. It was a study done by Elliot Aronson, legendary researcher. This again would have been back in the 60s. A very, very interesting study. He recorded a quiz participant answering quiz questions, and this quiz participant was insanely talented. They were answering all these questions correctly. What's the capital of Turkmenistan? They get it right. They get all these questions right. And then at the end, for one set of participants who are watching the video of this very smart quizzer, the video cuts. All you see is the quizzer answering these questions correctly. For another set of participants watching the video, they keep the camera rolling. And the quizzer walks off stage. Now, the quizzer is actually an actor paid by Elliot Aronson, but none of the participants know this. Quizzer walks off stage, is handed a coffee, takes a sip of the coffee, clumsily spills it all down himself. So it's got this big coffee stain. What a doofus. Oh dear. Anyway, Aronson hypothesized was that perhaps an intelligent person who showcases a small weakness, clumsiness, perhaps that intelligence combined with a weakness might make that person more likable. And he shows this video to two groups of people and asks them, how likable is the quizzer? And what he finds is that the quizzer, who is highly intelligent but spills coffee down themselves, is seen as insanely more likable. I shouldn't be attracted to someone who might cause me a third-degree burns. And yet it's not the case. When someone is just purely showcasing their strengths, it's a turn-off. We actually feel like we like someone when we can see their weaknesses. Brands use this really well. Marmite in the UK say you either love it or you hate it. Avis's famous campaign, we're second, so we try harder. Buckley's cough medicine talks about how horrible the taste is. Red Bull doesn't hide the fact that their drink isn't particularly nice. It works for all of these brands because by highlighting weakness alongside a strength, you become more popular. And I think political campaigns, now, some maybe more populist politicians would steer away from this, but I think you could still argue that they have weaknesses in some ways and their fans still embrace those weaknesses. But I think the campaign we've seen in New York is a great example of someone who's not afraid to hide their weaknesses. Definitely an intelligent person, definitely well-spoken, definitely articulate, definitely great in debates, and yet at the same time seems a bit goofy, doesn't really mind making a fool of themselves, doing these silly little videos, sort of seems pretty genuine, down to earth. And I think it's that combination of that strength and that weakness that actually makes someone far more likable. If you're just showcasing your strengths, you won't be seen as very likable.
No, very true. I think it's having that relatability factor, right? And having people say like, oh, he's like me or they're like me. It makes a big difference. And last thing I wanted to hit on here is just general messaging, because of course, I'm sure you hear this all the time, right? There's a lot of messages out there. Brands are trying to get in your ear. Creators are trying to get in your face, and everybody wants to tell you something, right? How would you say a message can break through the infinite scrolling deathscape that we're currently in, how would you say that somebody's message could actually break out of that and find an audience nowadays?
Yeah, $1 billion question. What behavioral science and psychology can tell us is the laws, the principles that tend to work that can give you a leg up. It won't make me into a US political candidate. There tends to be an idea that distinctiveness is very effective at getting your message to be recalled. Now, there'll be eye rolls for the listeners here thinking, God, I've heard this before. Yeah, stand out and you'll be more likely to be remembered. This isn't just, go to a conference for real estate agents with a mohawk while everyone else is in suit and tie. This is a little bit more nuanced than that, which is that in order to stand out, you shouldn't just think, I need to be different from everyone. I need to paint my brand pink or grow a mohawk. What it actually means is you should look at the messages of those around you and make sure you're not falling into that sea of sameness. Great example of this is a 1990s study that was done with Heineken. Heineken were looking for a new slogan that would make them more memorable. This was in the US, just entering the market. How can we make people remember our ads? And so they tested, it was a great A/B test, or ABCDF test. They tested, I think, 12 different slogans, and they measured the recall a month after people heard them. And they saw them in the wild. It's a great experiment. And the slogans like Heineken, the great taste of beer, instantly forgotten. I think only 8% of people remembered it. Heineken, open your world, like 4% remembered it. Heineken,
no
the
thanks.
freshest beer you've ever heard. And the reason that doesn't work is because we've heard it all before. We've heard beer brands talk that way. They came up with one slogan. US beer fans will understand this. It's a little more nuanced for us in the UK, but I drink enough beer to even understand it myself. Hello. And their slogan was Heineken, the beer that made Milwaukee jealous. Genius slogan. Very distinct. I think they brew a lot of beer in Milwaukee.
They do. Their baseball team is called the Brewers, so they do be brewing out in Milwaukee. Yes, that is something.
This slogan, they do be brewing, is another slogan they maybe should have gone for, because I love that as well.
That's coming next.
The slogan, the beer that made Milwaukee jealous, was recalled 81% of people a month later. So incredibly high recall. And that is not because they went for something totally wacky. They didn't do a ridiculous slogan like beer that tastes like Coca-Cola or beer that tastes like a pink unicorn or something absolutely crazy. They looked at their competitive market and they thought, how can we say something which is slightly different from what has typically been heard? And if you can do that, you're far more likely to stand out. I think this campaign in New York is a great example of someone who was trying to say something slightly different, wasn't lecturing people, trying to talk in their language, trying to make them feel positive about the current state of the world in a liberal way, which is not typically done in politics at the moment. I think liberals tend to lean on more fear-mongering, and I think, trying to frame these things in a positive way is a slightly different angle. And being distinct in that way will make you far more likely to be remembered. But it's not always used, because Heineken, what slogan did they go for? Heineken, open your world. I don't know. They don't even follow their own advice. They don't even follow their own. It's like, come on, guys. It's not that hard.
Phill, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for your insight on this. Thanks for being here. I'd love to have you back. And obviously, everybody should check out Nudge Podcast. All right, and that'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of HubSpot Media. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at thehustledaily. We'll see you tomorrow. Hey everybody, I've been listening to this great podcast lately. It's called Latinx in Power, hosted by Thaisa Fernandez, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So Latinx in Power is a podcast that features interviews with top-level executives, entrepreneurs, and innovators from Latin America, aiming to demystify the tech industry by providing listeners with an insider perspective and insights from Latin American leaders who have succeeded in their fields. A lot of great episodes on this one. My personal favorite recently was an episode with Isabel Alvarez, who is a graphic designer that designs cookbooks. She has 15 years of experience blending editorial design, branding, and experiential design. She really views design as a catalyst for meaningful social change, so I think this is a great episode to get you going with this show. You can listen to Latinx in Power wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, look. Side hustles fail when they consume all of your time. I mean, every single bit of it. The pros, though, work smarter with AI doing all the heavy lifting. To help you out, we just dropped the Side Hustle Accelerator database. You can search your exact problem for your side hustle, grab the perfect prompt, and get results. If you're struggling with marketing, content, and customer service, it's all solved in just seconds. This isn't just another tool, guys. It's your unfair advantage in a spreadsheet. So stop asking AI the wrong questions and start scaling with what actually works. You can get it for free in the link in our show notes. And you can stop right now, actually. Why don't you take a look down at those show notes and tap the link? You don't want to sleep on this.